In the next 900 seconds, we will break down 6 games for you headed into week 8 with the Water Boy. We'll have prop bets for you, and we'll go ahead and just dive right into Stanford and Florida State. Waterboy, this is one where we like the Stanford quarterback to go over his passing yard total right now against this Florida State defense. Excuse me.
Yeah, I mean, I think you see first of all, for him, I mean, this is something that he started off the season terrible. The team was losses at Hawaii, losses at BYU, but obviously that BYU team a lot better. Losing to them even 27-3 early in the season doesn't look as terrible. They've lost to SMU and UVA, but they've even in the last game against San Jose that they were competitive. He blew through with 444 yards. You're seeing his attempts really tick up these last 2 games. They just don't have a really strong running game. They've had to kind of split. Ford hasn't been what they thought he would be. They've had the backup. He's playing a little bit more, so they just don't have a consistent run game. He's the passing game as they've worked. This coaching staff being brand new, he's just kind of developed along, and I think that 215 line, especially as 17.5-point dogs, that they'll really want to, they'll have the opportunities to throw. And this Florida State defense has not been anything extremely impressive. They had the first week against Ty Simpson where it looked good, but I think you'll see. Let me pull it up. I don't have it on hand.
Yeah, last week was pretty rough against Pitt.
Yeah, last week was. That's kind of where they are. They have not won. I think you take out Cal, that was at home. They haven't won a road ACC game now in a year and a half of seasons. So this is, going out west, kind of looking rough. But yeah, they allowed last week the true freshman Henschel 321 yards. And so that's Eli Holston's been the starter all season. Then 2 weeks ago, Henschel gets a start, plays well. Florida State feels like, hey, we got a freshman. We'll be able to confuse him. They don't. He was 21-29, 321. I think this is a really good spot for Gulbranson to go over 215.5.
Moving to a SEC matchup, we like the over here for the Ole Miss running back Lacy to go over 17.5 attempts. Waterboy, why are we thinking that the running back here will get the load of the carries against this Georgia front seven?
Well, kind of the big thing you heard from Kiffin outside of their last year and this year, the O-line injuries, it really is, there's nothing you can do about it. It's just bad luck. But the big thing he really has talked about, the difference this year versus his last several years, is having a bell cow at running back, somebody that can carry the ball, as you see with his splits, 24, 23 times the last few games, because I read a really good write-up from a Georgia guy on one of their boards, and it went into, it was really interesting, had the glossary of all their terminologies at Georgia and Kiffin at Ole Miss use for their offense and defense and how they play off each other, what they're expecting. Big thing was what Washington State showed in their certain formations that they were able to get, how they were able to get pressure on Chambliss. And that one of the big things you're going to want to do is that Kiffin likes to start off first downs with RPOs, and you want to force Chambliss to hand it off by sitting down a linebacker to cover the slant route. You're going to want to force him to run it because you're wanting to keep them in those 2nd and 8s that really get their timing off, that make the distances a little bit longer. And I think the other thing, too, is Chambliss's first road start. Georgia Stadium is 90,000 plus. If you watch the Georgia game versus Alabama, you'll see that, Alabama took 3 timeouts in like the first quarter. If it may have ran into the second quarter early on, but Ty Simpson was really struggling to communicate, get his protection set, make audibles. They were milking the play clock every single down just due to the noise. And that's with helmet comms still. That's how bad the noise is. And so I think Chambliss's first road start, you're going to want to keep things as simplified as you can. You're going to want to try and run that ball early. And I just think, the way his offense is built on off the run and what that does to the defense, what that allows, it's not so much that they run it because they're super successful at it. It's just for them, it's a necessity. It's something they're not going to just abandon. You kind of see that with Alabama. They're 51-49 to the pass, even though, you think their run game's terrible. They're just not going to abandon it. They're still going to do it. And so I think, sitting there that 18, I'd probably, if he was sitting at like 21 and a half, I think that would be a difficult line to pick. But at 17 and a half, and with, Chambliss, I don't think you'll see too many, he may run it more than expected, but Lacy's still hitting that over with Chambliss getting 14, 15 attempts. Their other running back, he only got like 3-4 carries against Washington State. He got banged up, looked like a concussion. So if Lacy's really the only guy you have, I see him going over.
Moving to a big-time ACC matchup, the North Carolina Tar Heels and the Cal Bears. We like the Cal tight end here, Mason Minnie, to go over 43.5 receiving yards. And if you see here up on the screen, he's actually gone over this total for 3 straight games, and he's looked like he's getting some more targets and some more receptions.
Yeah, it feels weird to call a California UNC game a big thing to watch, but it is just to see kind of the implosion of UNC football. I think, I've seen people that like UNC at that 10.5. I think that's one thing that I love models. I love projection models and things that look at that because it's a great starting point. It really takes out that human element of bias and things like that. But I think one thing that you always kind of got to be aware of, like, we looked at betting against Boston College last week. What team, dysfunction in an organization isn't really captured by a model. And this looks to be a very dysfunctional organization. But even beyond that, they're traveling out west, body clock, those kind of issues. But when you look at UNC, they had very few returning linebackers, had a ton come in through the portal. It's Belichick's son, the set defensive coordinator. He's also kind of helping with the linebackers. So how focused is he? But biggest thing I really liked about the mini bet was if you look at the passing yardage UNC has allowed to Power 4 teams, TCU, UCF, and Clemson. In all 3 games, the tight ends accounted for 24, 34, and 24% of the total passing yards, which if Minnie gets even close to that kind of share of 23 of his, I think the quarterback for Cal's line is 261. If he got anywhere close to in that range, he's sitting at like a 60, 70-yard game. So I think that is just, they've been very weak to it. He's really come on. A lot of good coach speak about how he's developed in running his routes. So I think he'll get the necessary targets.
Oklahoma traveling to South Carolina, and this is one where we like the South Carolina quarterback LaNorris to go under his rushing yards. And we've got it pulled up here for you guys. Looks like really outside of the Kentucky game, he's gone under this total in every game this season.
Yeah, and it's not so much I think with him, you look at, I think the big thing not talked about that is South Carolina's biggest issue is with Mike Shula as offensive coordinator. There have been constant issues with his offenses that he's involved with at the coordinating level, or where anytime he really has oversight of the whole offense, even back to his Alabama days 20 years ago, their offensive line is just always an issue. They always have just poor blocking schemes. They've got injuries that have compounded that. And so it's just a really bad offensive line. I think, they've shown that they try to keep Sellers in the pocket when he passes and then do some design runs. I mean, but still, they're still running him a lot and he's getting beat up. And I think even with that, it's also just as much a system play with Oklahoma. With the rate that they sack, with their schemes, I just, a quarterback rush, I'll keep taking them against Oklahoma when they give us a line that is, in that 20s to 30s.
Moving on to another ACC game. Here we have the running back for Syracuse, Willis, to go under his receiving prop, under 11.5 receiving yards. And you can see we got you pulled up for you guys Very rarely does he catch the ball, and he's only gone over 11.5 yards one time this season, and that was back in Week 5 against Duke.
Yeah, Nixon. It's really that the way that it's shaken out now that their quarterback's been hurt and they're having to start the backup Collins. You're seeing that Nixon, the other back, is really their primary receiving threat. That if they don't, the only time they've really involved in that Duke game with Willis is when they're able to sub, that they're going slow. They're kind of, it was early on that he got a 2-yard catch, 8-yard catch against Duke, and then after that they really abandon it, and you haven't seen them come back to it. But Nixon is really the one that they've utilized in the passing game, and so I think you're just seeing him. That's just not what they're looking to use him for. And against Pitt, I think Pitt has been so good against the run that I don't think you're going to see as many packages with Willis out there. I think it's more a game where you want to have Nixon. You want to have somebody that, sure, you can run it, but then you can get up there quick, have full-on receiving threats with your backs out there. And so I like him too. I would even say if you also have his 1.5 reception line, it wasn't available on what I can get, but I also like his under 1.5 reception line. And if they're going to set it at about 1.5 and he get 1 to 2 catches, he's only, the one time he's gone over was 3 catches, and that last catch was in garbage time down 28 points. So
final prop bet for Week 8, or final prop best bet for Week 8. We like the under here for Jamal Haynes, the running back for Georgia Tech, facing the Duke front 7 this week. We like the bet to go under 59.5 yards. And you guys can see here that it's been kind of touch and go with his production. So, Waterboy, why are we liking the under so far for this game?
So with Georgia Tech's rushing attack, everybody knows Haynes King, but you're also seeing that their other running back, he has really kind of come on. Let me pull up right quick his carries here, because Malachi Hosley, so only had 3 versus Clemson, and then since then it's been Temple 5 for 59, Wake 8 for 36, and then against Virginia Tech 11 for 129. He's just really coming on as an equal threat. Key has mentioned in his press conference this week how that running back rotation is very important to them now that they're into constant ACC play, keeping all of their people fresh. I think you'll see King. He'll have his runs. I mean, that's kind of when it gets crunch time. That's what they'll go to, is Haynes King running it. And so I think you'll see, especially in a game like this, where when they were playing Temple, it was run, run, run. Virginia Tech, it was run the clock out. You've got a lead. Duke has an offense that can really push the pace, make them have to keep up on the scoreboard. And so I think you'll see King probably passing a little more, or them just trying to be a little bit more explosive. And I think with Jamal Haynes, it'll be a situation where probably just doesn't have enough carries. And what kind of confirmed me on it is actually his rush attempt line that you would think is around that 12.5, 13.5. It's sitting at 11.5, juiced to the under. And so if he's sitting at 10 to 11 carries, then if you told me he had 10 to 11 carries, then I would take this bet every time.
Best bet recap time. We like the over 215 passing yards for the Stanford quarterback. And the Ole Miss, who's Ole Miss play this week?
They play Georgia.
Excuse me. How can I forget? In the Ole Miss Georgia game, we like the running back Lacy to go over 17.5 rushing attempts. In the Cal UNC game, we like the California tight end Mason Minnie to go over 43.5 receiving yards. In the South Carolina Oklahoma game, we like the South Carolina quarterback LaNorris to go under 26.5 rushing yards. In the Syracuse game, we like the running back Willis to go under 11.5 receiving yards. And finally, in Georgia Tech Duke, we like the Georgia Tech running back Jamal Haynes to go under 59.5 rushing yards. We did finish 3-3 last week on our best bets for props. And I know, Waterboy, one that I want you to touch on because I think it's a really awesome bet, and we've seen a lot of Kaydn Proctor on the field for Alabama. So could you walk us through the free bet that you can get at the at
Well,
Bovada?
I had a free roll, so I was like,
No, please talk us through it, man. This is a great bet.
So I do want to talk about the one that I think is kind of to tease my way into it is, anytime touchdowns can be very touch and go, but I think when you're looking at those for value. And so I first started, somebody in the Discord here mentioned Riscano for Arizona. Talked to a guy I know is a big fan of them. We had talked about the BYU Arizona game, and Riscano's been hurt a lot this year, and he's missed several games, and he still has 2 rushing touchdowns, which is more than the other running backs. He's the most senior guy. He's the red zone threat. And they just have been a lot of really great coach speak about him. Everything he said is that he's glad they let him rest so that he's now 100% healthy. So I thought, I was looking at that. I was like, okay, I like that for a little bit on 1 or 2. And then started looking at the touchdowns because, like, all right, I'm thinking about anytime touchdowns. So I go look at Bovada to look at and some in other books looking at Alabama touchdowns, and the only one that had Kaydn Proctor was Bovada. And it was one of those where I'm like, I want to be on it if he scores, because and I think here's the thing, the way I could see like the really bad beat is he can probably throw one off of these, like, a jump pass or something like that, because they're absolutely going to be selling out. But they've just really been using him in a lot of interesting ways. And you can tell that they want to keep doing it. It gets the guys fired up. It really gets them bought in. It causes confusion with the defense. And I think this is something that they don't with Jam Miller. Jam Miller looks like he's probably going to play. But I think with, the concussion and them not really having a solid threat at the goal line, we saw that they did pass last week, 4th and 1 to the running back Hill. They had a really good scheme there. But I think you're seeing that when they have that short yardage and it's earlier in the game and they're wanting to get a first down, wanting to get a score there, they've shown that they'll throw him out laterals, that they'll move him around, they'll hand off to him. So I think this is something that it wasn't a one-trick pony. We've seen this, and it's kind of one of those, the basis of it really is he's been so close. It's kind of one of those players or things you sense that, he's starting to smell the goal line, like he wants it. And so I think here, also too, probably more touchdown opportunities. And Tennessee is a team that can score, so you're not going to want to waste red zone opportunities. So I think you'll see a lot more of the playbook open up in the red zone in those short yardage situations. But it's just a fun one because I really think he's been so close several times. They keep giving him plays, and they seem to install a little something new, a little wrinkle off of it. At that he's hard to stop. That's a lot of man
Bubba,
running to you. And if he hadn't slipped last week, he'd have scored. But I think too, the way you saw he fell, then Ty Simpson trips. I think that's something that if they get there to the goal line, that they'll just they might feed him more than just once to get him in, because I kind of where you'll sometimes see where they give a guy the touchdown at the 1 yard to reward him, like, all right, you've got us this far. I think you might see that kind of come into play. He hasn't gotten to the end zone yet. I think they'll want to give him one.
Yeah, it's something they've been clearly working on, obviously, in practice, because we've seen it now in the Missouri game, and then we saw it in the Georgia game with his big reception. So, this Big Bubba can get in multiple ways, and maybe we can get that plus 4,500 home on Kaydn Proctor anytime touchdowns. You can follow the Waterboy at the Waterboy_TI on X. You can follow the show at CFB900. Bobby and I will be back here to break down everything that happened in Week 8, as well as looking ahead to Week 9 with a couple best bets for you guys on Sunday's openers. Until then, wishing you guys the absolute best of luck on all of your bets tonight and tomorrow. Adios.